The rain had not stopped for hours. As the black cab pulled up to the iron gates of Grantham Hall, Amelia Carter pressed her forehead gently to the cold window. Her eyes traced the silhouette of the estate she would now call home. It stood proud and silent, an ancient mansion with ivy-covered stone and towering chimneys, nestled deep in the Wiltshire countryside. She took a deep breath, hand resting on her softly rounded stomach. At 6 months pregnant, every movement seemed heavier now, and the thought of settling in such a vast, unfamiliar place filled her with quiet apprehension. Sebastian Wycliffe, her husband of 2 years, leaned over and squeezed her hand. "You will love it here," he said, his voice smooth and confident. "Grantham has been in my family for generations. It's a place of history. Of legacy." Amelia offered a polite smile, though her heart felt oddly unsettled. She had grown up in Bristol, a world of art galleries, shared flats and the buzz of modern life. Grantham Hall felt more like a museum than a home. Inside, the grand foyer was as imposing as the exterior. High ceilings, oil portraits in gilded frames, and a chandelier that looked as though it had never been dusted. Lady Evelyn Wycliffe, Sebastian's mother, descended the staircase with the grace of a woman who had ruled this house far too long. "You must be exhausted, Amelia," she said, offering a cold kiss to the air near her cheek. "Let the staff take your things. Supper will be served shortly, in the blue parlor." No mention of the baby. No warmth in her tone. That night, Amelia found herself wandering the corridors while Sebastian worked late in the study. The hallways whispered with echoes of the past. Family portraits stared back with stone-cold expressions. Every door creaked, and the scent of lavender and dust lingered like perfume trapped in time. Then she found the nursery. It was locked. Curiously, all other doors had opened with ease. This one, painted a soft shade of blue, had a heavy brass handle and a keyhole that looked untouched for years. She bent slightly, trying to peek through the slit, but darkness swallowed everything. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her. She turned quickly. It was one of the maids, young, nervous-looking, and pale. "Beg your pardon, miss," the girl whispered, lowering her eyes. "You're not to be in this part of the house after dark." "Why not?" Amelia asked, her voice calm but firm. The maid hesitated. "That room's been closed for many years now. Best leave it be." Amelia nodded slowly, saying nothing. But as she turned to walk back down the corridor, she noticed something chilling. A child's footprint. Small, wet, and fading, right in front of the locked door. The morning sun barely reached the east wing of Grantham Hall, where the windows were narrow and tall like the slits of a watchtower. Amelia sat alone in the drawing room, a half-drunk cup of tea cooling beside her. The events of the night before lingered in her mind, the locked nursery, the frightened maid, the ghostly footprint. Sebastian had already left for the city. He was expected at the firm's offices in London, as he often was during the week. Lady Evelyn took breakfast in her private chambers and rarely spoke before noon. Left to her own devices, Amelia wandered again, this time toward the library. The heavy oak doors creaked as she pushed them open, revealing a room of mahogany shelves, leather-bound books, and dust-misted windows. The scent of aged paper and old smoke wrapped around her like a memory. She loved libraries. They made her feel safe. As she moved between the aisles, her fingers grazing spines that hadn't been touched in decades, something on the far wall caught her eye. A painting. Large. Framed in blackened wood. Hung just slightly crooked, as though someone had tried to forget it was there. The colors were muted, the brushwork hauntingly familiar, almost delicate, but filled with unease. It was a portrait of a young boy. Pale, perhaps 8 years old, dressed in traditional riding attire. His eyes were grey like smoke, his expression unnervingly blank. Behind him, the faint outline of Grantham Hall. The child stood stiffly, as if posed by force, his tiny hands clenched at his sides. No nameplate. No signature. Just a title scrawled faintly at the bottom in thin gold script. Frederick. Amelia's breath caught. She stepped closer, drawn to the eyes that seemed to follow her across the room. The name rang faintly in her ears. Sebastian had never mentioned a Frederick. Nor had Lady Evelyn. And yet, here he was, immortalized in oil and shadow, tucked in the far corner of the library like a secret. She didn't know how long she stood there before a voice startled her. "You've found him, then?" Amelia turned sharply. It was Dr. Alistair Reeves, tall and lean in his grey overcoat, standing just inside the doorway. "Who was he?" she asked. The doctor stepped forward, removing his gloves with slow precision. "Frederick Wycliffe. Sebastian's younger brother." Amelia frowned. "But Sebastian never said." "He wouldn't," the doctor interrupted gently. "Freddie disappeared when he was 9. It was a scandal. One the family never quite recovered from. Lady Evelyn insisted the matter be buried." "Disappeared? As in?" Alistair hesitated, then looked at the portrait. "Vanished. From that very nursery you tried to enter last night. One moment he was there, asleep in his bed, the next, the window was open, and he was gone." Amelia stared at the painting. The child's expression no longer seemed empty, but mournful. As if he had known what was coming. "Did they ever find him?" she asked softly. "No. Not a trace. No ransom. No sightings. Nothing but that portrait, and a single, muddy footprint beneath the window." Amelia's stomach twisted. The same size. The same story. Dr. Reeves studied her face for a moment. "Some say the house is haunted. That Freddie never left. But it's just superstition, I imagine." But Amelia was no longer listening. Her gaze was fixed on the boy's hands in the painting. Clenched tight. So tight, she was certain they held something. Something he had wanted the world to see. That evening, as the wind howled through the chimneys and branches scratched against the window panes like brittle fingers, Amelia found herself once more drawn to the corridor that led to the nursery. She had barely slept since seeing Frederick's portrait. Something about the child's clenched fists refused to leave her mind. What had he been hiding? Or protecting? And why had no one spoken of him? She could not shake the feeling that her baby was somehow entangled in a story long buried. The corridor was silent. The same hush she had noticed before, thick and almost unnatural. She walked slowly, the wooden floor creaking beneath her feet. The nursery door still stood firm, pale blue with its tarnished brass handle. Amelia reached out and, once again, tried to turn it. Still locked. But this time, she had come prepared. From the depths of the library, she had taken a small antique key that had once rested unnoticed beside a stack of ledgers. She did not know if it belonged to the nursery, but something about its ornate pattern and faded metal had whispered to her. She slid it into the keyhole. It fit. A soft click echoed in the silence. Amelia hesitated, heart pounding. Then she opened the door. The nursery was dim, lit only by the golden spill of moonlight. Dust floated in the air, thick and slow like ash. It was a room frozen in time. Toys scattered on the rug. A tiny bed with an embroidered quilt. Books on a low shelf. A wooden rocking horse in the corner. Everything untouched. Undisturbed. For how many years? She stepped inside, barely breathing. Her hand brushed the quilt. The fabric was brittle. Then she noticed the window. It was locked. Amelia frowned. Dr. Reeves had said it had been found open the night Freddie vanished. But the window before her was sealed tight, the latch rusted shut. And then she heard it. A whisper. Soft. Like the rustle of paper. Faint as wind. It came from behind her. Amelia turned slowly. Nothing there. She moved to the bookshelf. The whisper came again, closer this time. Her eyes scanned the titles. Children's books. Fairy tales. Picture books. All aged and yellowed. One of them was out of place. Titled The Woodland Fox, it looked newer than the others. Its spine uncracked, the colors untouched by time. She pulled it from the shelf. Inside was no story. Instead, its pages had been hollowed out to create a space. Within that space lay a folded piece of paper. Old. Fragile. With trembling fingers, Amelia opened it. It was a drawing. Crude, childlike. Done in pencil. A boy in a bed. Another figure, tall, looming, featureless, standing over him. A window. And a dark shape crawling through it. The caption beneath, in a child's careful scrawl, read: "He comes when mother sleeps." Amelia stared at it, the hairs on her arms rising. Suddenly, a loud creak echoed through the hallway. She rushed to the door, but it slammed shut on its own. Trapped. And behind her, the rocking horse began to move. Back and forth. Back and forth. Amelia pounded on the door, her knuckles raw from panic. The nursery remained sealed behind her. She turned, her eyes darting across the darkened room, breath short and shallow. The rocking horse creaked steadily. Back and forth. Its shadow stretched long across the wall like the crooked arm of something alive. Then, silence. It stopped. Amelia stood frozen for a heartbeat longer, her ears straining. And then she heard it again. A thump. Gentle, but deliberate. From beneath the floor. She crouched down, pressing her ear to the wooden boards beneath the rocking horse. Another thump. Then a scrape. As if something, or someone, was shifting below. A loose board near the base of the rocking horse caught her eye. Carefully, she pulled at it. The edge lifted with a groan, revealing a shallow cavity. Inside, wrapped in a faded length of muslin cloth, was a leather-bound journal, small and worn, with initials embossed in gold. F.W. Frederick Wycliffe. Amelia opened it slowly. The pages were childlike but intelligent, drawings, fragments of sentences, thoughts written in the uneven scrawl of a frightened boy. One phrase appeared repeatedly across different pages, each time in more frantic ink. "He wears father's face." Amelia felt cold. She turned another page. "I saw him again in the mirror. Not me. Him. He whispered to me while I slept. Mother won't believe me. She calls me wicked." The entries grew darker. Some pages were water-stained, others smudged as though tears had blurred the ink. Frederick had been scared. Not of ghosts or fairy tales, but of someone real. Someone close. The last entry read: "If he finds this, he'll make me vanish too. Like he did the others. But I remember their names. I remember." And beneath the words, a list of names. 7 of them. Amelia's skin prickled. None of them were familiar. She whispered the last one aloud. Clara Maynard. The moment she spoke the name, the nursery air turned thick. The temperature dropped, her breath visible in the moonlight. A sharp knock rattled the door. Then a voice. "Mrs. Wycliffe." It was the maid from before, the pale, soft-spoken one. I heard a noise. Are you all right?" Amelia scrambled to the door, turned the handle, and to her astonishment, it opened with ease. The corridor beyond had returned to its normal, quiet self. The maid looked at her wide-eyed. "You shouldn't have gone in there," she whispered. "She doesn't like it." Amelia stared at her. "Who?" she asked. The maid hesitated. "Clara." She was the nanny. A pause. She vanished too. The next morning, Amelia awoke to find the journal gone. She had placed it on her nightstand, its weathered leather cover still warm from her hands. But now, only the empty surface remained, no sign of the book, the muslin cloth, or the chilling drawings it contained. She sprang from bed, heart racing. Had someone taken it in the night? Sebastian had returned late, long after she'd pretended to be asleep. She hadn't heard him enter the room. Downstairs, the hallways felt colder, the portraits darker. Even the sunlight that slipped through the stained glass felt dimmer somehow. Lady Evelyn was waiting in the morning room. "Do sit down," she said coolly, pouring tea with her usual stiffness. "You look unwell." Amelia sat, her gaze steady. "Did you come into my room last night?" Lady Evelyn didn't blink. "No. Why would I?" There was something in the nursery. Something Frederick left behind. And now it's missing. Lady Evelyn set her teacup down with a sharp clink. "You should not go digging into things that do not concern you," she said, her voice laced with frost. "It does concern me," Amelia replied, keeping her voice low but firm. "He was a child. A scared one. He wrote about someone hurting him. Someone close. If you know what happened to him, you need to tell me." Lady Evelyn stood. "Enough," she said. "You are not part of this family's past. You are here to carry its future. That is all that matters. But my child could be in danger." "Your child," Lady Evelyn interrupted, leaning in close, "will inherit the Wycliffe name. That means protection. Stability. But only if you stop meddling." Amelia stared at her. The old woman's eyes were sharp and unreadable. "What happened to Clara Maynard?" she asked. For a moment, Lady Evelyn's face changed. Just a flicker. Something between guilt and warning. "She was dismissed," she said. "For disobedience." "She vanished," Amelia shot back. "Like Frederick. Like the others." Lady Evelyn turned toward the window. "There have been accidents. Unfortunate ones. But Grantham Hall is not to blame. This house holds many things, yes, but it also keeps them. As long as the walls are undisturbed, they stay quiet." Amelia rose. "You're protecting someone." Lady Evelyn didn't respond. Amelia stepped closer. "Was it Sebastian?" Silence. Then, without turning around, Lady Evelyn said quietly, "Ask yourself this, Mrs. Wycliffe. Would you truly know the man you married, if he stood before you with someone else's soul behind his eyes?" Amelia could no longer sleep. The walls of Grantham Hall had become too loud. Not with sound, but with presence. Every corridor now felt watchful. Every creak of the staircase made her pause. The silence was no longer peaceful, it was oppressive, heavy, waiting. Sebastian returned later than usual that evening. He kissed her cheek gently, asked about her day, poured himself a brandy by the fireplace as if nothing were amiss. But Amelia watched him closely. His eyes didn't look tired. They looked distant. The same eyes she had once loved, soft, intelligent, familiar, now seemed to belong to a stranger wearing a well-practiced mask. After he went to bed, she stayed awake, pacing quietly in the west wing until she stood once more before the locked nursery door. Except, it was open. The door stood ajar, shadows spilling into the hallway. Amelia entered cautiously. The nursery was still and cold. The rocking horse hadn't moved. Nothing had changed, except the mirror. It was an antique thing, tall and cracked slightly at one corner, standing against the far wall. She hadn't noticed it before. Now it seemed to notice her. She approached slowly, and for a moment, all seemed ordinary. Her own reflection stared back. Pale, anxious, heavy with child. But then, her reflection blinked. Out of time. Amelia froze. And her reflection smiled. Not her smile. Not a smile she would ever make. She stumbled back, breath caught in her throat. The mirror darkened. Behind the glass, a figure began to take shape. A man. Tall. Dressed in 19th century formal wear, his face partially obscured by shadow. But his outline was unmistakable. He looked exactly like Sebastian. Amelia's mouth opened, but no sound came. The figure raised one hand and placed it against the inside of the glass. She did the same, compelled. For a moment, the cold between them dissolved. Her palm met his through the pane. And she saw a memory not her own. A child crying. A locked room. A father shouting. A woman pleading. A hand on a shoulder. Then another, tighter. A push. A scream cut short. And silence. She pulled back, gasping. Her heart pounded as the vision faded. The mirror was just glass again. She backed out of the nursery, shaking. Down the corridor, she saw someone watching. It was the pale maid. Her hands clasped in front of her apron. Eyes wide. Unmoving. Who is he? Amelia demanded, her voice trembling. What is he? The maid opened her mouth, and for the first time, spoke clearly. He's not your husband, she said. Not always. Not at night. Amelia stared at her, her thoughts spiraling. The maid stepped forward, lowering her voice. They call it the passing. A shadow that moves from blood to blood. From Wycliffe to Wycliffe. It's always been a man. And he always comes back when the heir is near. Amelia clutched her stomach. Her baby. The next heir. The air in Grantham Hall shifted. It was subtle, like the change in atmosphere before a storm, where everything holds its breath. The candles burned lower, as if reluctant to shine. Amelia moved like a ghost herself, watching, waiting, fearing. She had stayed silent after the maid's confession. Not out of disbelief, but out of terror. Her thoughts spiraled, but one remained clear above the rest. She was not safe here. And neither was her unborn child. That night, she found herself drawn again to the west wing. The corridor was dim and long, the wooden floors cold beneath her bare feet. As she passed the old study, she paused. Something had shifted. The portrait. The one of the Wycliffe ancestors. It was different now. The man in the painting, Lord Cedric Wycliffe, Sebastian's great-grandfather, had turned his head. Just slightly. Enough that his gaze now followed Amelia's every move. Her blood ran cold. She rushed on. At the end of the hallway, a narrow staircase led down to the old servants' passageways, long since disused and sealed off, according to Sebastian. Yet now the door stood slightly open. Amelia descended slowly, her fingers brushing the walls for balance. The air was damp and old. She reached the bottom and found herself in a cramped, low-ceilinged corridor lit only by her candle. Cobwebs clung to the corners. Old furniture, crates, and trunks lined the walls, abandoned in time. And then, footsteps. Not her own. Someone was down here. She turned sharply, raising the candle. Iris. She whispered. No answer. Instead, a dull knock came from beneath her. The floor. Amelia crouched. Her candlelight flickered across the uneven wooden planks. Dust danced in the air. There was something carved into one of the boards. She cleared the dust. A name. Frederick. Her breath caught. The forgotten brother. The name no one mentioned. The child in the vision. A creak behind her. She spun around. The pale maid stood at the top of the stairs, her face unreadable. "You shouldn't be down here," she said. Amelia stood, shaking. "What happened to Frederick?" The maid's lips trembled. She stepped closer. "They sealed him beneath the nursery," she whispered. "After he changed." "Changed?" Amelia repeated. The maid nodded. "He was the first to be taken by the Wycliffe spirit. The passing began with him. He tried to fight it, but it consumed him. He grew violent, inhuman. They locked him away and buried him in secret." Amelia's knees weakened. She looked back at the carved board. Still solid. Still hiding something beneath. "Why?" she asked. "Why didn't they destroy it?" "Because it lives in the blood," the maid replied. "And now it waits for your child." A sudden scream echoed through the hall. Not from above, but from within the walls. High-pitched. Agonized. Childlike. Amelia dropped the candle in shock. The flame extinguished. She was left in the dark. And something was breathing close to her ear. The walls pulsed with silence. Amelia's breath trembled in the dark, her back pressed to the cold stone as something unseen shifted nearby. Her candle was gone, swallowed by the dirt floor, and her vision was now surrendered to the gloom. Then, a sound. Gentle. Rhythmic. A lullaby. Soft. Male. Sung in a broken voice. "Sleep now, little heir. Rest without a fear." Amelia stiffened. The voice wasn't Sebastian's. She rose slowly, hands guiding her along the wall. Her fingers brushed a groove, stone-worn smooth. She followed it blindly until her palm met a crack. A door. Hidden in the wall. She pressed. It groaned open with a moan like a sigh of the dead. A staircase descended into the shadows. Step by step, Amelia moved downward, heart thundering in her chest. The air grew colder. Thicker. It smelled of soil and old blood. At the bottom lay a chamber. Circular. Stone. Bare, except for one thing. A crib. Dusty, ancient, surrounded by faded sigils drawn in red. And inside the crib, wrapped in rotting lace, was a doll. Its porcelain face cracked, its eyes hollow. But the doll was not what held her frozen. It was the figure crouched beside it. A man. Or what had once been a man. Pale, thin, impossibly tall. Dressed in what looked like the remains of an old velvet suit. His hair hung in silver ropes around a face that had forgotten how to be human. He turned. His eyes were pure white. "You brought it," he rasped. Amelia couldn't speak. Couldn't move. "You are the vessel," the figure said. "It was always you. The bloodline chose. The Wycliffe heir must pass through death to reign eternal." He rose slowly, towering above her. "I waited. I whispered. I called to your child. And now, it comes." "No," she choked out, finally. "You're not real. This is madness." But then he reached out, and the sigils on the ground ignited in crimson light. The air filled with the scent of smoke and roses. A scream tore from the walls again. And then, Sebastian. He burst into the chamber, wild-eyed, drenched in sweat. "Amelia! Don't listen to it!" he shouted. He lunged for the figure, but the moment he touched it, he was flung backwards. The entity did not move. It simply willed. "You betrayed me," Amelia whispered. Sebastian tried to rise, blood on his lip. "I didn't know it would go this far," he gasped. "I thought the passing had ended with Frederick. But the blood lives in you now." The figure's voice echoed. "She carries the seed. And the heir must be born into my keeping." Amelia's body shook. The pain in her stomach grew sharp and unbearable. No, she murmured, falling to her knees. The spirit moved closer. But then, Iris. She stepped into the circle, clutching an old, dusty book. No more. Iris cried. You fed off this family long enough. The sigils flared, burning brighter. The spirit screamed, a sound like metal tearing. Read it, Iris. Amelia screamed. And Iris did. Words in a language that felt like thunder. Power filled the chamber, and the spirit convulsed. Light burst from the floor, cracking the stone, swallowing the circle. The entity wailed. Then silence. Darkness returned. And the figure was gone. Sebastian groaned, crawling toward Amelia. I tried to protect you, he whispered. But I failed. Amelia held her stomach, tears on her cheeks. I will protect my child. With or without you. Sebastian nodded once. But as he lowered his head to the floor, the walls pulsed again. A heartbeat. Not hers. Not the baby's. But his. Frederick's. Still here. Waiting. And somewhere deep in the earth beneath Grantham Hall, a second heartbeat answered.